A woman is grinding barley in the dark. It is before sunrise. The house is still. The oil lamp on the ledge is the only light. Her hands move the way they have moved every morning for 30 years. Pushing the stone forward, pulling it back, forward, back. The flour falls into the groove and collects in a small pile between her knees. She is about 48 years old. Her hands are rough. Her knuckles are swollen. Her back hurts from 3 decades of bending over the same stone, in this same room, in this same house carved into the limestone hillside of Nazareth. Her son is sleeping on the other side of the wall. He is about 30. He has eaten every meal she has ever cooked, every piece of barley bread, every bowl of lentil stew, every fig cake. And today is the last time she will cook for him. She does not know this yet. Or maybe she does. Maybe she has seen it coming for weeks. The way he talks, the way he prays, the way he looks at the road south toward the Jordan River, where a man named John is baptizing strangers and calling Israel to repent. Something is about to change. And the last ordinary thing she will ever do for him is make his breakfast. This is the story of one meal. The last meal Mary cooked before Jesus left home. Before the meal, let me show you the kitchen. Archaeologists have excavated first-century Nazareth houses. They know exactly what Mary's cooking space looked like. It was not a separate room. It was a corner of the main living space, maybe 6 feet wide, with a few tools that had not changed in 1,000 years. A basalt grinding stone on the floor, 2 pieces of volcanic rock, one flat, one round, fitted together so tightly that the grain between them turned to powder with each push. Mary used this stone every morning of her adult life. A tabun oven, a dome of clay and straw, about 2 feet tall, built near the courtyard wall. You light a fire inside it, let the clay heat for an hour, then slap flatbread against the inner wall. The bread bakes in 2 minutes. A few clay pots, one for lentils, one for water, one for olive oil, a stone mortar for crushing cumin and coriander, a clay jar of salt, a basket of dried figs, a skin of wine hanging from a wooden peg. That is the entire kitchen. No counter, no shelf, no table. Everything happens on the floor, on her knees, with her hands. This is where she has fed the Son of God for 30 years. And this morning, she's going to do it one last time. The bread comes first. It always comes first. Deuteronomy 8:8 lists the 7 foods God promised Israel: wheat, barley, grapes, figs, pomegranates, olives, and honey. Mary's kitchen runs on this list. Every meal she has ever made comes from these 7 ingredients. She takes the barley flour from the grinding stone, mixes it with water and a pinch of salt, kneads it into a flat disc about the size of her hand, and carries it to the tabun oven. The fire has been burning since she woke up. She opens the top, reaches inside, the heat hits her face, and presses the dough against the inner wall. 2 minutes. The bread puffs, browns, and peels off the wall. She catches it with her bare hands. She has done this 10,000 times. Her fingertips do not feel the heat anymore. While the bread bakes, she puts lentils on to cook. Red lentils soaked overnight in a clay pot over a small fire. She adds olive oil, a crushed clove of garlic, cumin, and salt. This is the stew that has been the backbone of every poor family in Galilee for centuries. Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of this. She sets out dried figs, a dish of olives cured in salt from last autumn's harvest, and olive oil in a shallow clay bowl for dipping. And that is the meal. Flatbread, lentil stew, figs, olives, oil. No meat. Meat is for Sabbath. This is the breakfast of a poor Galilean family, and it is the last one she will make for her son. Now feel what this morning means to her. She made this meal when he was a baby, and she was chewing bread soft enough for him to swallow. She made it when he was 5 and sat on the floor next to the grinding stone, trying to help her push. She made it when he was 12 and came back from 3 terrifying days lost in Jerusalem and ate as if nothing had happened. She made it when Joseph was still alive and the house had a man's voice in the morning. She made it after Joseph died and the house went quiet and her teenage son took over the workshop. She made it every morning for 30 years. The same stone, the same flour, the same oven, the same hands. And now those hands are setting the bread on a clay plate for a man who is about to walk out the door and never come back to live in this house again. Subscribe right now if you want to sit at that table with her. Because what happens when he wakes up is the moment every mother recognizes. He comes through the doorway. His hands are a builder's hands, thick and scarred from Joseph's workshop. He sits where he always sits, on the floor near the wall. The bread is in front of him. The stew is in front of him. Everything exactly where she always puts it. They eat. No gospel records this conversation. Nobody wrote down what a mother and her 30-year-old son said to each other over the last breakfast they would ever share in their own home. But every mother in your audience knows what this meal sounds like. It sounds like silence with weight in it. It sounds like a question she wants to ask, but does not ask. It sounds like a son who has already decided something and is trying to find the words. Maybe he tells her he is going to the Jordan to see John. Maybe he says he will be back in a few days. Or maybe she already knows. She has known since the angel came to her in a dark room when she was 14. She has known since Simeon held her baby in the temple and said he would be a light to the nations. She has known since her 12-year-old son told her, "Did you not know I must be in my Father's house?" She has always known this morning was coming. She just did not know it would feel like this. Here is what she cannot see from her kitchen floor. She does not know that the hands breaking bread across from her will break bread again at a table in Jerusalem 3 years from now and say, "This is my body, which is given for you." She does not know that the meal she makes every morning, bread, broken, shared, will become the most repeated ritual in human history. She does not know that the son eating her lentil stew will feed 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish. She does not know that the boy she taught to say the blessing over bread will bless bread at a table where 12 men will eat with him for the last time. She does not know that the next time she sees him in Jerusalem, he will be carrying wood on his shoulders. Not the wood of Joseph's workshop, the wood of a Roman cross. All she knows is this: the bread is warm, the stew is ready, her son is eating, and the house is still full. In an hour, it will not be. He finishes eating. He stands. He picks up a small leather bag, a change of clothes, a water skin, maybe a few coins. Nothing else. Mary stands with him. She is shorter than he is now. She's been shorter than him since he was 15. She looks up at the face she has fed for 30 years. The Gospels do not record this goodbye. There is no verse for it. Nobody was in the house except the 2 of them. But every mother knows what this doorway looks like. It is the doorway between the life you had and the life that comes next. It is the doorway where you realize your child is not your child anymore. It is the doorway where 30 years of grinding barley and baking bread and setting the plate in the same spot every morning suddenly has an ending. He walks through it. He turns south, toward the Jordan, toward John, toward a baptism he does not need but chooses anyway, toward a ministry that will last 3 years and end on a hill outside Jerusalem. Mary stands in the doorway. She watches him until she cannot see him anymore. Then she turns around. She walks back into the kitchen. The breadcrumbs are still on the floor where he sat. The clay bowl of stew is still warm. The grinding stone is still covered in flour. She kneels down. She picks up his plate. She washes it. She puts it back where it always goes. And tomorrow morning, she will grind the barley again. She will bake the bread again. She will set the plate in the same spot on the floor. But there will be one less person eating. Step back. See what just happened. The most important ministry in human history started the way every ordinary day starts. With a mother making breakfast. No trumpet, no angel, no voice from heaven. Just a woman on her knees on a dirt floor, grinding barley before sunrise because her son needed to eat before he left. She did not make a speech. She did not give him a blessing. She made him bread. She made him stew. She set the plate where she always set it. She fed him one more time. And that was enough, because for 30 years, every meal she made was an act of faith she never named. Every morning she ground the barley was a morning she kept the Son of God alive with her own hands. The world remembers the miracles. The world remembers the sermons. The world remembers the cross and the empty tomb. Nobody remembers the 10,000 breakfasts that came before any of it. Except her son. He remembered. Because 3 years later, when he wanted to explain to 12 men what his death was going to mean, he did not reach for a sword. He did not reach for a crown. He reached for bread. He broke it. He said, "This is my body." He chose bread. The thing his mother made him every morning of his life. Every communion table in every church, in every language for 2,000 years is set with bread. And the reason Jesus chose bread is because bread is what his mother gave him. If this changed how you see Mary's kitchen, subscribe. Share this with a mother who has spent years feeding her family and never been told that what she does matters. And tell me, what hit you hardest? The grinding stone she used for 30 years? The last plate she washed? Or the moment you realized why Jesus chose bread? I read every comment. I'll see you in the next one.